Chair, we're now live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. A warm welcome to those attending and also to our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Resident Services Select Committee. My name is Councillor Bridges and I'm chairman of this meeting. Key role of this committee is to monitor the performance of local public services within its remit and to hold in-depth reviews on topics of resident interest. We engage with a range of external witnesses in our activity, which can include community groups, residents and subject matter experts. Where we identify areas for change or improvement, we make recommendations to the decision-making cabinet. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the broadcast. Please note that members of the committee will be using tablets, laptops to view their agendas today. Some quick housekeeping rules. We're not expecting a fire alarm to sound this evening. However, if one sounds, please follow the officers to the fire exits and out of the building to the designated meeting points. And for those in the room, please your mobile phones on silent or switch them off before the meeting starts. And we also have residents' feedback forms available here in the room and also on YouTube underneath the broadcast. We'll move now on to our main agenda item. Before we do, I will say to members present, you're welcome to take off your jackets if you wish to do so due to the heat. And we'll start now with apologies for absence, please.
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any declaration of interest in matters coming before this meeting? I can see no indications. Item 3 is to receive the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 1 to 14. Can we, Councillor Smallwood?
Chair, goodness gracious me. I just wondered if there was a possibility, and I'm going to do this in the minutes, because it was what will probably be Councillor Gardner's last meeting on this select committee, and I actually think she served this committee with a great deal of diligence, always spoke her mind, as is her classic way, and actually was a really valuable member of this committee, and I welcome Councillor Gaelic to her place, and she's got incredibly big shoes to fill of Councillor Gardner. I just wondered if there's a way we could place on the record our thanks to Councillor Gardner for her hard work on this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Yes, I fully agree. Councillor Gardner was a very well-respected member on this committee on both sides of the political arena, shall we say, and I think she'll be fairly missed on this committee. She's contributed a great deal over the years, and if we could minute our thanks to her and her contributions, that'd be much appreciated. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I can confirm that all business this evening will be discussed in part 1. There are no part 2 items to be considered, which brings us on to our next item. Item 5 is the animal welfare and animal licensing information item, pages 15 to 50. And we have this evening with us Daniel, Ross and Stephanie. So welcome to you all. Whenever you're... sorry, no, we don't have a presentation, sorry. We'll go straight to questions, if members can indicate now. I'm looking around. Councillor, save me, Councillor Farley, go on.
Thank you, Chair. There's a bit of feedback on these things tonight, isn't there? On page 29, one thing that was a concern was the section about planning and preparedness, and it's saying that currently London Borough of Hillingdon may not be sufficiently prepared to respond effectively to an outbreak. I'm curious as to what actions in the background are being taken to ensure that we are prepared as an authority.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Currently we've started engaging with the Resilience Forum. The London Borough of Hillingdon Risk Register is currently being reviewed, and the risks in relation to animal health and animal disease are included in that. Off the back of that, we will now look at the disease contingency plans to see how we can work with those and become better prepared for an outbreak. It will mean dedicating some officer time to the role to ensure that we're fully aware of all farms, small holdings, and that includes local areas, green spaces of common land where animals may be kept. We do keep a register of all poultry keepers and keepers of other animals, so we do have some insight into that. We aim to do some work in terms of gaining access to movement databases for different animals, and to start carrying out some on-farm inspections in the coming months.
Councillor Farley, your follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm just curious as to where the authority is sort of falling down with this and why it's sort of now been identified that this gap exists.
It's an area of work where we are perhaps not as rural as some other local authorities, so we don't have as many farms or small holdings within the borough as other unitary authorities or district councils. It's something that we do monitor. I regularly attend Association of Chief Trading Standards Officers meetings to keep up to date on what's happening with various different diseases, so that will include blue tongue, avian influenza, and it also includes any outbreaks that are happening on the continent, so we're aware of those, such as foot and mouth, which has had a couple of cases recently in Hungary and Germany, and there's also been a further outbreak of lumpy skin disease in Italy, which affects the wild boar population. Diseases like avian influenza and blue tongue will very likely become endemic in the coming years, I think, and there are vaccines being produced at the moment for farmers so that they can vaccinate their herds against these diseases. So they will be managed, but over the years it's been something that we have been monitoring but haven't, due to resourcing issues within the department, we haven't really had the time to dedicate to it full time, unfortunately.
Councillor Farley, can I just add something as well in terms of being a team manager, in terms of what Ross has touched on in resources? You know, we're pleased to sort of like say in the last, I think, 8 months, and she can't be with us right now, but Kate Morris has joined us, a very experienced animal welfare from the police. You know, this employment was supported from our head of service, Stephanie Waterford, but also our directors as well, which is an excellent contribution to the team. And, you know, Ross, quite admirably, has been tackling the whole area of animal welfare on his own, and just from those pages 15 to 50 you can see the detail in the area of the work that he's had to cover. So I'm sort of like pleased to announce with the recruitment with our newer officer, hopefully we can focus more on these important areas.
Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if I could take back through some of the cases of the horses, the ones in Bayhurst Woods particularly interested me because residents contacted me about them, and it's really pleasing to see Ronnie is now living happily in Cransford Park. I should go and pay him or her a visit and feed him a carrot or something if you're allowed to do that, I'm not sure. I just wanted to understand what the sort of first 48 hours looks like when that happens. Sometimes these things maybe be a bit slow get going. When they do get going, clearly there's a good news story to be told, and people go and live in harmony elsewhere. But I just wanted to understand what sort of like the first 48 hours looks like when a resident gets in contact or a partner gets in contact to say, I'm concerned about these horses. What is it we do with other partners to go and rescue them?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So as soon as we become aware of a serious welfare issue, we will visit within 24 hours if we possibly can, and an assessment will be made then by ourselves on how serious the situation is. We've had 3 or 4 instances around the borough now of horses that have been in particularly poor condition. Something that does hold us up slightly is if we're going to take animals into possession, then we really want that to be signed off by a vet to say that the animal is suffering or likely to suffer, which is under the Animal Welfare Act. I'm not for a minute disputing residents' concerns, but sometimes residents can not quite understand the full situation with horses and whether they're suffering or not, or indeed other animals. If we are sure that on inspection that an animal is suffering, we will engage the services of a veterinary surgeon to come out and make their own assessment, and then we would be led by that. If the animal is on council land, then we can serve a abandonment notice, and the situation can be cleared up within 3 or 4 days then, as long as we can find somewhere for that horse to then be transferred to. It does involve us having to source transporters, assistance with getting horses loaded, but assuming that we can find somewhere for the horses to go, then we can move them pretty quickly. If it happens to be on land that is not local authority owned land, then we need a vet to sign off on the horse or horses suffering, and then we can take them into possession under the Animal Welfare Act.
Councillor Small, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Chair. This one I think we must be a little bit careful on, given there's a live court case regarding it. I'd just like to talk about the rather disturbing incident that happened in my ward, actually, of Ruislip, regarding some young people mutilating an animal, a cat, in fact. Whilst I don't want you to comment on the case, what I'm interested to do is, and if it has got nothing to do with us doing this, is there anything we do working with the police and partners to find, how these young people were able to obtain that cat? I understand there may have been other animals involved. Have we done any work on the sort of did somebody sell, I guess my question is, did somebody sell them those animals, and did we trace it back to how they got hold of them, etc., etc.? Is there any work that we've had to do in and around that case? I'm not asking you to comment on the actual specific case, but actually on the specifics of how those animals came into the possession of those quite, I think they've been charged, so I think I can call them quite evil people. I'd just like to understand if there was any interface we've had that. If we haven't, I do, but it is a live animal welfare case, probably the most live animal welfare case in the borough in recent times, so I think it's important to ask. Thank you, Councillor.
I'm personally not very familiar with the case. We do work with the police very closely. We're in the very lucky position that Kate Morris, that joined us, has come from the Status Dogs Unit. Over the years, we have built up a relationship with that team anyway, where the welfare of dogs is concerned, and specifically for banned breeds also. We do work very closely with the RSPCA, who are more than likely to get the first call or referral into animals that are suffering or being mistreated. I think people see them as the main animal welfare organisation, so they wouldn't generally be notified first, and they're very good at contacting us for support, so we would work very closely with them. In terms of where people are obtaining animals from, it's a nationwide issue where animals are being bred and being sold in the absence of a licence, and unfortunately it's no different in the London Borough of Hillingdon. We have a lot of unlicensed dog breeders and a lot of unlicensed cat breeders. I'm working on a case at the moment which we've referred to in the minutes, in the committee report, which has been ongoing for best part of 4 or 5 years now. These cases can be very complex, very time consuming, but now that we have got Kate Morris on board and a second officer really to tackle the animal welfare issues with us, we are looking to actively start doing more work in terms of finding information about unlicensed breeders, whether that be dog sellers, cat sellers, whatever it might be, and carrying out investigations with a view to prosecution where we can.
Councillor Gohill.
Thanks, Chair. So my question is about something actually isn't mentioned in the report, but I think it comes under the general topic, and that's our aquatic friends. I'm talking specifically about an area that actually falls under my ward, which is Little Britain Lake in Cowley, which is home to many swans, geese, goslings, etc. And recently, by recently I mean last year, there's been a horrific rise in attacks on these animals in last month. and I was surprised to see that they weren't mentioned in the report at all, given the seriousness of it. So I just wanted to ask, and perhaps someone can answer this. I appreciate it's not really a licensing issue per se, but perhaps if I could get some sort of answer, because it is kind of related. Can you just outline what the council's statutory responsibility is when it comes to the welfare and protection of aquatic animals in those areas, and how they might be fulfilled in practice, because it is also a conservation area as well.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Animal welfare under the Animal Welfare Act is not a statutory function, so it's not something that we have to do, but it's something that we do. There are pieces of legislation that make animal welfare statutory in certain conditions, like the welfare of farmed animals. In terms of areas like Little Britain Lake, where you have wildfowl, it's certainly something that we would be happy to look into, but that might fall more closely under the remit of the Metropolitan Police Wildlife Crime Unit. Now, we're quite happy to engage with them, and we have engaged with them with other wildlife crimes that have been referred to us, but they are a very small team as well, so how responsive they can be, but it's certainly something that we can try and establish a better working relationship with and see if there's more that we can do in terms of that now.
Councillor Gohill.
Thank you. I do have a supplementary, thanks. My supplementary is around unmonitored fishing on that lake, and that's obviously something that comes under the council's remit and not really the Met Police's remit. And is there anything we're doing to protect that, given discarded fishing lines, etc., that can get caught in feet of animals, etc., or cause some pretty serious harm? I've got some pictures I can show you if you'd like, but.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of the fishing licensing, that's not a remit of the licensing team, unfortunately. So I'm not familiar with anything to do with the licensing for fishing in any of the local authority lakes. It's something that I'll be more than happy to look into for you, and I can certainly raise it with different teams that may have an interest, such as Green Spaces. I'm not sure which team now processes applications for licensing for fishing, but I can certainly find out, and I'll be happy to take that away for you.
Councillor Gohill, we have a number of other officers wishing to go in on the back of that. So Stephanie and then Steve.
I may be saying the same thing that you were about to say, Steve, but the fishing licences, I believe, are administered on behalf of Green Spaces. I'm not currently know who actually does that in the council, but we did used to have fishing bailiffs who used to work at Little Britain Lake. We do not have those anymore. They were part of a previous restructuring decision. So if we are finding that the area is, it may need to be reviewed again, with a view to sort of making some recommendations over how that fishing lake is actually monitored and the users of it.
Steve.
Thank you, Chair. So within the allotment report, you'll see that there's a new sort of dedicated officer, which is the allotment and fisheries officer. So that will pick up those responsibilities. So where those fishing rights come under the council and under the council's purview, we can pick that up. So what I can do is provide a briefing note to this committee on the role of that officer in the fishing context, where their powers, remit, responsibilities are, or is something that you might wish to have a further update report on in the future. But certainly in the interim, I can provide a briefing note on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gaelic.
Thank you, Chair. My question is about compliance, specifically about the licensings which are issued for a period of 1 year, where there are minor failings against the mandatory conditions. And I assume you'd be attending to check if there are any improvement during those first 12 months. Would these visits be unannounced or announced, and how many generally would there be?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. With the animal licensing regulations, if a business does have one or two minor failings in terms of the inspection log, the inspection sheet is essentially made up from the statutory conditions that are applicable to every licence that would be issued, and that's what businesses have to comply with throughout the term of their licence. If there is one to two minor failings and we come back to carry out a supplementary inspection, that does have to be announced. The animal licensing regulations do provide officers with certain powers, but generally where businesses such as home boarding for dogs, for example, it's going to be done in a residential property, and that doesn't give us the power of entry into a residential property, so we do have to give them at least 24 hours notice.
Councillor Gaelic, do you have a follow-up you wish to ask? Or? No, okay. Councillor Core.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of capacity, where Hillingdon, on page 15 says Hillingdon has one officer that is qualified and another that is currently undertaking the training, is that undertaking the training is Kate you were mentioning? Okay. So when on page 19 it says council has two licensing officers, it's her as well?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, that's correct. So the situation with the animal licensing regulations is local authorities have to appoint a suitably competent and qualified officer. To become suitably competent and qualified, there are official training courses that officers have to undertake. I have undertaken and passed the qualification, so I'm currently the one appointed officer that we have. Kate Morris is undertaking the training at the moment. Once she's finished the training, she'll then have to go and do a series of assignments, which will then be marked, and then we would know the outcome of her training. I'm sure she's a very bright girl, so I'm sure there's no reason why she wouldn't pass, but that would then give us two appointed officers to carry out the inspection for licensing work. But we have said in the committee report that we do have two officers dedicated to this service as a whole for animal welfare, animal licensing, because she picks up a lot of the animal welfare issues at the moment.
Councillor Cole?
Thank you, Chair. On page 17 it says that there are a number of businesses including dog breeding, home boarding and dog daycare that have not renewed their license and may be potentially operating on unlicensed spaces. The team is closely monitoring these premises. What does closely monitoring look like?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. We would start with reminder letters to let the businesses know that their licence has expired. If we do not receive an application, we would then try and contact them by post or email to establish if they are still operating and whether they need to renew their licence. If they haven't renewed the licence and we believe that they are still operating, we're currently building in routine inspection visits for premises that we believe to be unlicensed and carrying out door knocks, so they would be included on those.
Any further questions from members? Councillor Smallwood?
Thank you. I noticed in the report there was a little bit about wild animals. So across the borough we've got some, SSI woodland, we've got a lot of open and green spaces, and if you were to come up into Ruislip Woods, and I'm sure the Friends of Ruislip Woods would love to take you around, you will, if you stood quietly in a tree, you would see an awful lot of wildlife in and around there, insects, birds, mammals. What responsibility do we have, or if any, to look after them. I recognise we can't go around looking after every butterfly, but do we have what is our responsibility? What work do we do to ensure that those animals are left to get on in their natural habitats as best as possible?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. In terms of the licensing team and the work that we carry out, we're always happy to respond to reports of animal welfare issues. In terms of disturbance to the environment, that is not something that would sit with our team specifically. I'm not sure if that would be more towards our green spaces team potentially.
Thank you.
Councillor Small? No. Councillor Farley?
Thank you, Chair. I am distressed with regards to page 26, that dogs being, well, not having been rehomed or returned to the owners, and that 24 dogs sadly were put down. I'm just curious in terms of any information that the Council has regarding the legislation that's coming in to do with ensuring microchipping is happening to dogs, and whether we've seen any if there's any data that shows us an improvement to the numbers of dogs, or I know if you start at the beginning of the year and as you go through, there are fewer of them that are not microchipped. Is there any trending that assures that people are cottoning on to the fact that they should be microchipping their animals?
Thank you, Councillor. So the microchipping again is another area of work that is unfortunately in its infancy with our team. We recently went through quite a lengthy process in the renewal of the contract for the collection of stray dogs. Now that that's in place, we receive or we have access to their database for all the dogs that are collected as strays, and that feeds us information on whether they're returned to their owners or whether they're rehomed. For the ones that are returned to their owners, we know whether the dog is microchipped correctly or microchipped incorrectly, or not microchipped at all. So the dog warden service will initially send them a cautionary letter to advise them that their animal needs to be correctly microchipped, and it's an offence if they don't. We then now have started following up with that with our own letters. We will give 3 weeks between our letter, our first initial letter, and our second letter. We'll then give them another 3 weeks, and if they don't comply by then we would start to go down the road of prosecution for non-compliance. It is a little bit of a double-edged sword in that it will help to drive compliance with the microchipping, but there's also the danger that if we have a lot of cases where people are simply not getting their dogs microchipped or their animals microchipped upon our request, which leads to prosecution, it may well take up additional time with our legal services team, which is something that does need to be considered. Because the work is in its infancy and we've just started working on this, I'll certainly be more than happy to report back to the committee in a couple of months' time, if that would be suitable, and to give you some figures on how we're getting on with compliance issues with that.
Councillor Parley.
Thank you, Chair. So just for clarity then, so the onus under the regulation is for the local authority to check or to enforce the microchipping, is that correct?
That's correct, Councillor, yes. It's with
Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try Councillor Davis's trick. So, the defendants, one of the case studies says the defendants are paying monthly £350. Are they still in business? And where it says 104 complaints were received last year for barking dogs, any CPNs or CPWs were issued in this regard? Sorry. Thank you.
I've certainly put it in the Councillor Carr. In terms of like the CPNs, I don't believe there was any CPNs issued for barking dogs. You know, those are 104 complaints were given to us by our noise team, but no CPNs issued for barking dogs. Can I just? Are they still in business? This is Colin Avenue.
Could you go back?
While the that case specifically was ongoing, they did apply for a licence, which was for selling animals as pets, pet shop licence, and that covers cat breeding and sales. That licence was refused, and we believe that they are no longer in business.
I'm going to... Well, you sort of skated on the sort of outside of a supplementary on the last one, but go on, I'll let you.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of, I had actually too many questions to ask, that's fine. Where it says the officers would like to deliver training to animal welfare to other council departments, is it just a wishful thinking or any steps have been taken in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. If I can just touch on your last question. Regarding the CPNs, I'm not aware of any CPNs that were issued in terms of barking dogs, but it may be of interest to the committee. We did receive a report from a number of residents relating to dogs that were straying, and these dogs were straying late at night, running around the local area where they were from, and they did, two dogs did attack a cat. The licensing team managed to gather sufficient witness statements and evidence, and a CPW was issued in relation to that. That CPW was subsequently breached very quickly. A CPN was then issued, and that CPN was then breached very quickly, and the council did prosecute for further offences.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to follow up on something that Councillor Small brought up about the horses. It was mentioned that you need to get the vet in or someone to look at that. I'm just curious where you've got, I know you've got, we've got a heat wave going on at the moment. If you've got a horse that's in an open field, no cover, no trees, no shelter, no water, do you still need to wait for a vet to determine that the animal could be in distress if it's a baking hot day and has no access to shelter or fresh water?
Thank you, Councillor. We don't have to wait specifically. We can do that. In terms of when you are making assessments in relation to the health of an animal, I think from a council perspective it would be better for us to have a veterinary opinion where possible, and certainly we have a very good working relationship with several vets now, Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and we also have an appointed vet specifically for equine inspections for riding schools, so there would be no reason why we couldn't get a vet out within 24 hours to assess an animal from them to do that assessment. I think if there was serious concern in relation to that, I think we could also put in measures to ensure that the horse's welfare was being suitably looked after until such time as a vet was able to come in and inspect the animal for themselves.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also curious in terms of you have school fetes and things that occur where you've got like animals on display to interact with the public. Do they require licences, or is that something that's separate?
Yes, Councillor, they do. It's under the same regulations, so the licensing of activities involving animals, England Regulations 2018. The regulations basically is now the overarching legislation for various different activities. So previous pieces of legislation for riding schools, boarding of dogs, pet shops, all that was repealed, and the new legislation covers all these different activities under one umbrella, and within that the exhibition of animals is also covered in there. So that will cover if people are having pony parties, or whether it be exhibiting falcons, other birds for display, petting farms, things like that. As long as they fall within the scope of the legislation, then they would be licensable. And generally, as a rule of thumb, the first gauge that we would look at is whether or not that business is likely to be making more than £1,000 in a 12-month period. So that's basically from HMRC rules for whether whether it's a business or not. And we can look at how much the exhibitors are being paid, or how much money they're attracting to come and attend these fairs, because generally they're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart. They're there for financial gain. So it would generally be considered licensable, yes.
Thank you very much. I'll just submit a question of my own, if I may. The report gave no mention to grants or external funding opportunities, and I'm just wondering as to whether you've been successful in any previous bids. And I did a quick search online the other day, and there's quite a few different organisations and trusts available. I mean, there's Battersea Dogs Home, for example, offer partnership funding for community pet welfare and responsible ownership campaigns. The Dog Trust offer grants to local authorities for stray dog services, vet care and community education. The Home Office also offer public funding which can include dog-related antisocial behaviour initiatives, along with the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, I believe it is. But there's a number of groups that offer various grants, and I'm just wondering how on the ball are you with being aware of what's available for you in terms of funding, and how you're going about applying for those grants.
Thank you, Councillor. The London Borough of Hillingdon licensing team have engaged with DEFRA, and we have received funding for certainly recently, when the ban on XL bullies came into force. A lot of boroughs, and we weren't, I'm pleased to say, as affected by some boroughs, which may be more maybe more inner city, where people that own these type of dogs, it's more common there. We didn't see a lot of abandonment of these dogs, so we didn't need as much support, but we did get grant for that support. As an officer involved in this, and I attend various different forums and meetings, so these grants are frequently discussed there if there's any to be applied for. So although there may be other sources that we could look to, and I'll be more than happy to look into those, for official funding from government, certainly we apply for what we can.
Thank you. Can I just ask, in regards to the funding itself, is it solely reliant on you as officers to proactively go out and find what's available, and if there's an opportunity, apply for it, or do they engage with you prior to saying that there's X amount available, getting quick, it's open to everyone? How engaging is it?
Unfortunately, they're not very persistent at engaging with local authorities. The funding will be made into public knowledge for local authorities. Notices will be posted. There's an online platform called the Knowledge Hub, which is for local government and central government. Within that, there will be posts and notifications. So the onus is on officers to monitor that and pick up on these.
It's not a supplementary, but it's a clarification. Is this a public website which anyone can access, and if so, can councillors assist by actually looking and perhaps signposting you as well, in case you missed it?
It's certainly not a public website. An application would have to be made for access to that, and that would be dependent on your role, so it's really role specific, Councillor.
Thank you very much. We've been on this item for a while now, so we're now going to move on to the next item, but thank you very much to the officers for your attendance this evening and answering the questions. It's very much appreciated. And you may leave if you wish to do so, but by all means you're happy to stay as well. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the allotment provision in Hillingdon, and we have Steve with us this evening. There'll be no presentation on this, but we will go straight to questions from members, and I'll start with Councillor Davis.
Hi Steve, thank you for coming. When I've seen a report that we've allocated or we've employed an allotments and fisheries officer, when was he employed? It doesn't say that in the report.
I think just to sort of downplay the committee's expectations on some of this, so just to give a bit of context, I've been in role about sort of 6 weeks, something like that, so I'm still very much getting up to speed, but from what I gather, I've been in post now just a few weeks, but I will clarify that.
You have a supplementary?
I do, but I think it's going to be hard for Steve to answer it, if I'm honest. I've seen from the report that the allotment and fisheries officer has allocated 245 allotments. I just wanted to know over what period, but I suppose you're not going to know the answer to that if you don't know how long he's been here, do you?
Not at the moment, but I will follow that up to this committee.
Councillor Gohill.
Thank you and welcome. So on page 3, on page 3, could you just explain the financial information to me? Because at the moment it reads like and I'm assuming that the total income generated was for last year as well. So I assume it lines up with last year's spend. Are we making a 34k loss on allotments, or are we consistently making losses given the income that we generate and the annual budget, etc.? If that could just be explained, I'm a bit confused.
I think there's a bit of context in there to understand. So as the role of the new officer sort of begins to embed and that momentum grows, and you can see from the text within the report that there is an improving trajectory there, that will start to then improve the finances. The report says that essentially there's a loss of about sort of 20,000 between the difference between income and outgoings. That position will improve because of the allocation of the allotments. They're making sure that new allotments are bought online, and also that any vacant allotments are let at a much quicker rate than perhaps previously, and the report also sort of alludes to those improvements that have come through. So I think that financial information is perhaps contingent on when those improvements have landed and come through. That will change the picture, and perhaps it's worth a follow-up report to this committee later in the year, so you can sort of track that progress and hopefully see that upward trajectory still keeping on track.
Councillor Gohill.
Thank you. On page 7, and that's page 1 of the appendix 3, the terms and conditions, it says, it's again very similar to Darren's question, so Councillor Davis' question, so I appreciate you might not be able to answer it at this particular moment, but it says the allotment service appointed allotment officer or a council approved person will carry out regular site inspections to assess the plots against the terms and conditions. How often is a officer typically meant to visit an allotment site? So I won't ask for specifics, because I understand you might not understand that, but typically.
I think that for the new officer that's been appointed, again, touching on the previous question, there's a part about getting that service to an improved state. working through those numbers, working through those allocations and turning that around. From there, I think that those level of visits and those inspections will fall out of that once there's an improved allocation list and the sort of the makeup of those allotments are looked at. So some are probably too big and could be divided into two. There are some that are unallocated, need to bring those in, and there's a bit about working through the waiting list as well and making sure that those are turned round. But I would expect that every quarter there's at least some visits there to make sure that what we think is happening and the reality on the ground, to excuse the pun, is actually, we're alive to that and we're actually checking and verifying the data that we suspect that we hold.
Thank you.
Councillor Core.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome, Steve. Where it says that there is a long waiting list, and on page 5, the report that I have, it says that at one place there are 17 vacant plots and there are 8 on waiting list. So I'm just wondering, there is a waiting list and there is a vacancy, then why is there a waiting list?
I think that there's and the report does allude to it to a certain degree, that some of the allotments, and to go back to the councillor's previous question, do need to have those inspections. And I think for some, as the report suggests, that some people go and have a look at those allotments and either the allotment's too big or perhaps needs too much rectification work, and perhaps that can be a bit off-putting. So part of that officer's involvement in checking and inspecting and bringing those through. Others can be sort of where they're sort of allocated, and also any sort of, well, I would guess, health or age conditions of the prospective person to take that through. So I think there's a lot of work to do on bringing that together and doing that sort of matching service. But I think certainly in this day of age, and as the introduction to the report says, all of those issues of mental health, social cohesion, physical activity, public health, exercise on prescription, all of those things coming well, tackling the cost of living, those are things and agendas that we need to be moving towards, rather than just allocating allotments. How are we sort of aligning that with exercise on prescription? What are we doing in the public health agenda about that? There's, for want of a better phrase, I suspect an untapped market there that we should be working more to bring some more added value into this space.
Councillor Core, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Now that you're getting to know the role and everything, can I just also say that there are issues in some allotments that are self-managed. They have their own committees and they haven't had elections, or and then some antisocial behaviour. There were initial issues of drug abuse at one of the allotments. So how would that all be looked at now that review is being done, and especially in terms of where it's self-managed? Can we please make sure that the council eventually, it's easier for council to intervene quickly now that when new leases are put in place, that if there is a trouble, the council can intervene quicker rather than having to wait a good few years to find out how to go in?
I think that, again, as the role of the new officer starts to develop and provide momentum, that will sort of almost be a self-correcting status that we bring in. Part of that role should be sort of a collaborative role and working out and managing those sort of relationships, but working out as well with those self-managed allotments, providing advice and providing guidance, and being a sort of a friend there that can support. So I know that there are some issues, I know that there are some concerns, and we can certainly pick those up and start to deal with them now. We've got this additional resource that we've brought in, so I think that again is something for the future that you start to see some benefits of.
Councillor Gaelic.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm quite alarmed about the number of vacant plots, because about half of those allotment sites have over 20% of vacancies. One of them is about 64%. So that's obviously loss of income for the council. And so I would assume that previously the management of those sites was very poor. Were they run by someone called, I think they are site secretaries? Some allotments who have some supervisory powers to see how they are managed by tenants, or if they are vacant for a long period of time. Or do we have only just you to look after those? And also, do we have, I suppose we don't have any database or software system to help us manage those sites, because I know that there are some councils who have special systems to manage with a comparable number of sites. They generate around 150,000 in revenue a year. So if you could answer.
So I think in response to that, there's an agenda of work to bring forward. So I think what we've sort of discussed in a fair bit of detail is there's about that sort of improvement work that needs to be done, and bring that forward. Then, you know, start to sort of look at some of the terms and conditions and how we're allocating this, and some of the policies that we've currently got, and doing those review of policies. You know, is it appropriate? Does it meet our modern needs? Is it answering the questions? Is it moving? And making sure that we've got an eye on utilisation. So I think there's that review work to go through, and then I think, you know, to go back to a previous response, we get into that sort of self-correcting where we can move the policies, we're engaging more, we're sort of tackling any issues, where we're matching up prospective people with allotments. That brings in more income, that starts to sort of close the budget gap, and we get into that sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think there is a bit of time to let this get traction, and certainly I would recommend that there are future reports to come back to this committee with that more detail, but there's a wider agenda of work. And again, I would go back to exercise, prescription, public health. There is an untapped market there that we should be more aligned to, because there is, you know, there is a lot of activity there with exercise on prescription and all that goes with that as well. So we can bring that into play.
Councillor, yep.
Because I know in some areas where people living in flats or where houses without gardens, would it be possible under sort of agreement with the council to have a plot for limited, let's say for a couple of years, without necessarily sort of growing something, but use it as a green space?
I think that, well, certainly as a council, you know, many things can be possible, and if we sort of agree and under the requirements of a council, as long as it's legal and we've got the powers to do that, then, you know, we can take those decisions. So again, I think the previous answer was, let's move into that space and see what can be done. Let's improve what we need to do and get to a position that we can see that those benefits are coming through and those waiting lists are down, and then from there, when we're reviewing the policies and the procedures that go with all of this, those type of questions can feed in. I certainly know in other authorities that I've worked with, those sort of communal green spaces, you know, are really popular, really sort of tend to come through, and you know, is something that would be of a benefit to, you know, communities and neighbourhoods as well. So it should be looked at in the future, absolutely.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for coming to us today with this. I have got a bit of a gripe. It's not what you're doing. It's just I think it's something that should be considered potentially is the ordering of the terms and conditions. So reading through this, it's like, well, okay, well, what about this? And then you find out later on it's answered. So some of the things maybe should be brought into sections potentially to make it easier for the tenant to actually read through and actually understand it. So, for example, where it talks about 2.19, when it talks about that plots may not be under any circumstances cultivated by anyone else other than the tenant, and then you have to go on to 2.35 before it says actually you can then apply to someone's sick or whatever. So some of these things I think may need to be sort of reconsidered about where they're placed in the ordering, if that's something that could be looked into. I think that would be helpful. I'm also curious, with the talk of horses earlier on, 3.11 manure, I'm wondering whether the council obviously does things with food waste and composting and whatever, but that, as I understand, that generally goes towards energy recovery. Is there any scope for working with or cross divisions of the council with food waste, so some of it being used for supporting allotments and because it does talk about, it needs to be approved, and quite rightly, but is there any sort of scope that anything could be used cross divisions between waste services and green spaces for allotments?
So I think to answer the points in turn, I think the terms and conditions do need to be more user-friendly. I think that needs to come through. I think that's a piece of work that needs to be done, and probably putting that together with frequently asked questions and all that goes with that. So I fully take that point. I think that needs to be done. As regards food waste, in sort of principle, I wouldn't have an issue with that. I'm not aware of another local authority that does that, but certainly it's something that could be looked into, and we can sort of explore that and feed that back. So certainly that could be something for the future. Yes.
Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to understand. So we've got the directly controlled, for want of a better phrase, allotment sites from the council, also the list on page 5. Obviously these are alphabetical. I'm curious as to the ordering, what sort of put the focus on which allotment sites you're targeting for the overhaul and the redevelopment of them, what the sort of the key prerequisites or criteria that you're using to identify what is sort of in most need. And if I can sort of just sneak a little other thing into this, because I'm aware of allotment sites where you've got plots that have been maintained very well, but because of abandonment or whatever it might be, there are species of plant and so forth that are encroaching on other people's plots. But it's whether or not that features because that features into your assessment of priority over, I don't get the terminology, but essentially what you're doing to bring them up to standard. I'm just curious as to what you're using as that criteria.
In order to respond to that, I think we're probably at a more sort of basic criteria at the moment. So one is utilisation, maximisation of that plot. The other one then is about applying the terms and conditions as they are, but we also recognise that they need to be improved. So again, there's always been issues in my experience with allotments of, some can be really well maintained, some can be poorly maintained. How are those sort of standards pulled together? Is there a local committee, or a local chair of that site as well that we can work with to bring that through? Any sort of levels of investment that might be required, or previous questions about any sort of external money that can be brought in. So I think there's there's a range of issues there that need to be looked at. For me at the moment, it is about getting to 100% allocation, making sure that we reduce that waiting list and bringing that down, looking at the terms and conditions, looking at the policies, and then from there, you know, we move into enhancement and improvement. So I still think we've got a bit of a way to go on that journey there before we get into that sort of final enhancement process. But that will be work that we'll be bringing round really quickly, and we'll be able to come back with some more sort of detailed answers and metrics on that for what those requirements would be, and we can share them with this committee in advance, so you're fully sighted on that.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. What way should I go? Right, so just go back to finances. So it says last year's spend, it was 42,000. From past experiences, I've seen that the green spaces when it comes to allotments have been quite wasteful. So for a prime example, Grosvenor allotments, which isn't even on the list, well, is on the list, sorry, was cultivated. They cultivated every vacant plot and then never rented them out. So have we got better at that, or are we still doing things like this? Because I know firsthand that I witnessed all of the plots be repegged, remarked out, re-cultivated, ready to go, and then they sat dormant for 2 years. So that's my first question, or second question, I don't know.
So I think in response to that, the assurance that I can provide as look with Abbott, that the Head of Waste and Green Spaces began his role today, has come into role today. Part of that review was looking at, obviously, green spaces and making sure that questions exactly as you asked are there, and bringing through those improvements. So that sort of management oversight and challenge is being injected into that service. So we'll be able to bring those answers through. But you can be sure of that work has started as of 9 o'clock this morning.
Supplementary?
So my supplementary would go completely opposite direction. Have we managed to contact all our tenants? So I know prior to you being in role, that we really struggled to contact the people that had the allotments because they'd either moved out or they'd been sublet. For any reason, we were struggling to contact plot holders, and we found over time that because, say, Mr. Smith hasn't attended his plot, someone else has just taken it over. Have we managed to contact and give everyone an up-to-date tenancy agreement?
As regards the specific detail, I can't give you an assurance on that, other than, you know, with the work of the new allotment and fisheries officer, that work has started, and again we'll be able to feedback on the specific detail of that, but the work has begun.
Councillor Gohill.
Thank you. I wanted to ask if you knew how many notice of non-cultivations were given, but I don't think you were able to answer that given so I'll ask something else instead. What classifies non-cultivation? Like, what's the cut-off point? Because it wasn't really mentioned in the terms and conditions, and if I were to take out an allotment, obviously if I got through the wait list, I wouldn't know what classed as non-cultivation or not. Is it like an inch of grass, or is it like, you know, a full-fledged something growing? Or I don't really have a green thumb in that sense, but I just if we could get a bit of information to that, please.
I think the answer to that is in similar answers that we've provided, looking at those terms and conditions, looking at the way that we put those together. What are the specific policies that are driving this? Have those policies been sort of reviewed, challenged, or looked at in any way? And what, you know, do we have a standard definition to that? And I don't think that we do. So bringing forward that work to this committee to work through that, So we're clear, we've got clarity, we know what the definitions are, we know what the policy alignment is, and then we can work through all of that and be really clear, and I think that's part of the improvement work that we need to bring through.
Councillor Gohill?
Thanks. It seems like you've got quite a task on your hands. I don't want to add on much homework, but I will make a suggestion that I think could be generally quite useful to the whole allotment scheme, and that would be after a point at which you've got a database of contacts that Councillor Davis was mentioning, it might just be useful to implement something where the tenants themselves can maybe take a picture and upload it or something to a portal. Again, Councillor Garrett mentioned something similar to that as well, where they can feed back to us. Again, I think it will cut a lot of cost in terms of sending someone out there and getting reports. If someone just took a picture of their site and uploaded it once a quarter, for example, and it will also help us get an evidence database of issues like non-cultivation as well. So it's more of a request if you could try to implement that. I don't quite know how it will happen, but I'm happy to try and help you if you need it. Thank you.
I think the response to that is entirely something that we should be doing, and we should be bringing that forward, and that type of initiative. I'd be fully supportive of bringing that forward. Absolutely.
If I could just endorse that, because I actually had that vote down as my point, is that actually having, maybe annually or every couple of years, the tenants, the plot holders, to actually submit their details. You would do the same, for example, on the electoral roll. You would send your details in, say on the electoral roll, these people are in this household, or if you run a business, you'd submit a company statement annually to Company's House. I don't see why we can't do the same for tenants on allotments, where they could submit the details each year to say, these are my details, my contact details have changed or not changed, my plot is still in use or not in use. Just a suggestion.
Fully agree.
I don't think I've got anyone else. Who else wants to ask a question? Anyone else? Councillor Davis?
I love the allotment questions. Right, so I see there was a total of 1,300 plots. Is that all managed by the LBH, or are they including the independently managed sites? Because I've seen from the list that there's a couple of allotment sites that are not on there. Hayes End allotment's not on there, Wood End Green allotment's not on there. So I'm just wondering if all the plots have been allocated, or have you taken the managed sites away, the self-managed sites?
Yes, it's my understanding they're all LBH or BH allotments.
You have a supplementary?
Yeah, I'd question the 1,300 plots then. So I'd be interested to know the last time we had a count up of all the plots, because I would say that Wood End allotment, even though it is self-managed, is a very large site, and I believe the chairman now lives in my ward, so it would be worth a double check, and be nice to see an update on when that number was put together.
We can certainly bring that through and feedback to this committee on that.
Councillor Smallwood?
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd join in this merry allotment in a moment. I just wondered how we interact with other areas of the council. So I won't name the schools, but there's one school in my ward take some of the young people up to the allotments at this time of year, and they have a carrot and a tomato, and they really enjoy going up there and learning about it, and much of because they can see some of the work they do within there. And also, how do we sort of ensure that it's a positive for things like adult social care? Because obviously, if people are staying active and staying busy, just statistically, they're then less likely to need to access those sorts of services potentially at all, or potentially a lot later. So I just wondered how we work with sort of schools and other partners to sort of promote the good work that's going on along in our allotments, or how we support the allotment owners or the people running them to do that.
I think that's part of the agenda that we need to bring forward, with all of those other links that we've suggested. Public health, exercise on prescription, GP surgeries. There's all of that work that we need to bring forward and make those links, especially in into schools. So I think that's something that you'll see coming through as we progress.
Councillor Ward?
No follow-up, Chair.
Councillor Farley?
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with Councillor Gohill over the cultivation. I mean, it does specify in here what cultivation is, but it isn't. For the layman, it's not exactly user-friendly. So again, it's a whole aspect of ensuring that these are, if that is doable, to reorganise these terms and conditions. Because again, there's things that are just all over the place when you're looking through it. The plots, obviously we know they're all different sizes. I'm still got concerns over an earlier question that I raised to do with those plots which are not or haven't been managed very well, and there are things that are, so someone who's managing their plot well is having to fight you've got some species of plants that grow very, very quickly, are having to sort of fight back against these things that try to overtake their sites. I'm not sure that I don't know where you're coming from, it's about targeting what you need to, but I'm not sure that I've got a sort of a satisfactory answer for my own purposes of what the council is doing to try and deal with these issues, because these plots are just out of control in some instances, and they are, residents sort of trying to plant their fruits, vegetables, flowers, etc., and it's causing them grief. So I just want to sort of dig a bit more into that, as to understand what the council is doing on that front.
I think that we can look into that and feed that back. So rather than sort of give you an inaccurate steer, I'll look into that and feed that back as what we're doing exactly now at this moment in time. So let me do a bit of research around that, and then I'll feed that back.
Councillor Farley?
Thank you. And on the divorce sites, it talks about it seems to be the only engagement that the council has is mediation. Is that it, or is it, to what other extent is the council involved? Is it purely a mediation function between the committee and the tenant?
I think, as suggested earlier, I think there's a role in us for to be an advisory collaborative role, to provide sort of advice and guidance, and a sort of a requisite of some sort of professional knowledge as well. So I think we should be more sort of open and providing that and linking that through. And issues like schools and issues like exercise and prescription is all opportunities that we can use to drive that. So I think that's one of the things that we do need to pick up the pace on and improve in the future.
I'm going to invite any other people to ask questions before we close this one off, but I'll finish with you, Councillor Farley. If there's anyone else, no, in which case, Councillor Farley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on that, so I think there's the 7 self-governing sites. They are still council land, but they are handled by the committee. Ultimately, the council is still responsible for that land, so the committee is not doing the job that is expected of it. What powers has the council got over the committee? So obviously there's a mediation activity that's going on between tenant and committee, but overall it's still council's land. What's the sort of governance aspect from the council's point of view over the committee and holding it to account to what it's meant to be doing?
Again, I'll do some research on that and come back, rather than the danger of giving you an inaccurate answer.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. That concludes this item. I can just finish by thanking you, Steve. Welcome to your new role, but also congratulations on the work you've done this evening. I think it should be plain sailing from now on. You've literally been thrown in on the deep end, I think, on this one. But well done for answering the questions. I think it's been really helpful, so thank you for that. And we look forward to seeing you at a future meeting. You're free to leave if you wish to do so. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 7, the review topic selection, pages 51 to 62. Liz, would you like to introduce this, or do you want me to continue?
Yes, sorry, Councillor Smallwood, did you want to say something? Oh, right, okay. Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, really just to invite members if they have any ideas about our next review item. Clearly we've finished the homelessness review. So now we need to look into possibilities for our next review, which could be a minor review or a major review. Unfortunately, we can't do both at the same time, so it has to be one or the other. So there's a couple of ideas that were put forward in the paper. One of them was a minor review on fun fares, which I'm sure Councillor Bridges will say a bit more about, or alternatively there was an option of a major review into parking enforcement contract. So these are just two ideas, but clearly we would sort of welcome any other ideas if you have any you'd like to put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So I'll begin by saying that there's obviously going to be a lot of ideas and contributions this evening. I don't think it's going to be quite right to make a decision this evening. I think it would be best to collate all of the ideas from members first. We'll take them way outside the meeting, liaise with the officers and indeed the Labour lead, and hopefully shortlist something down that's practical and something that the committee can get its teeth into. On the issues that Liz has mentioned, so firstly on the fun fares, it was mainly my concerns. We've had an information item on fun fares before this committee recently. I personally wasn't satisfied with some of the answers provided. I think that was also evidenced in the follow-up events from that meeting when we had fun fairs visit the borough once again, and again we had the same issues with the fly posting and everything else. So I think it's worthy of some form of review from this committee to put in some practical recommendations to try and resolve those problems. And secondly, in regards to parking enforcement, if I could just narrow down the scope on that. My thinking around that was in regards to suspended parking in the borough. We have a lot of roads across multiple wards with suspended parking, and a number of those roads have been suspended for in excess of 20 years plus. And as a result of that, the wardens can't issue tickets for those roads. Some of those roads are actually situated where there's main schools, where pupils attend the schools being dropped off, and in the years gone by they've continuously increased with a number of issues in those roads with inconsiderate motorists, parking, obstructions, everything that goes with it. And consequently the wardens can't issue tickets. So that was my sort of scoping around that, is that do we need to perhaps review that list of roads and see if we can bring about any formalised scheme, not a parking permit scheme, but a scheme where it would clearly indicate on the road or the footpath where you can and cannot park, and as a result the wardens would then be able to enforce that and tackle the problems in those roads. So those are my two contributions, but I'm happy to take others, so we'll start with Councillor Smallwood.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could just start by recognising that we're 296 days off before there's an election in the borough, and I think it was brought up at the Children, Family and Service Education Select Committee that the way we have approached it on that committee, which I'm serve on with Councillor Gohill, is we don't really, and I don't know what other members feel, I think potentially want to be doing a review topic where, you know, the 7 of us could all get kicked out. You never know. And I just think it is sensible to make sure that we do something that goes to probably sort of March, April next year. I'm assuming we probably wouldn't have a committee meeting in the April. People might be up to other things. But we probably would have one in the March. So I think we need to sort of then recognise that's 296 days, probably minus another 40. So I just wanted to maybe put the committee's mind in that place when we're making a decision, rather than necessarily suggesting lots of ideas. But I just wondered if I could maybe come back with some ideas in a short moment, but just recognise that I think this almost needs to be a medium review. I'm creating reviews on the spot here, but something that we can get our teeth into, but recognising that some of the reviews that have been done across select committees in this council do sometimes take 18 months to 2 years. Some of them have been excellent, and members from all sides have contributed, and so have officers and outside partners well. But just setting that as a bit of a benchmark, maybe, Chair.
No, completely agree, Councillor Small. And as I said in my opening remarks, that's the purpose for tonight. We would take those away and liaise with the officers and say what's realistic, what's not realistic in terms of a time scale. Could we bring it before the committee, and then we can come back at the next meeting and give you the short list of what we feel can be looked at. No, not alligator, we've already looked at that. Councillor Davis?
Chairman, the funfair seems a good idea for me, but are we better to expand that to hire of council green spaces or council land? Because funfair is one thing, but I've noticed that we've had community events that are fly posted, etc. So maybe we're looking at that. And my suggestion would be a review on illegal trading, illegal street trading, etc. I know there's been a number of cases where we've only issued a certain amount of FPNs, and there's a nuisance aspect to that as well, so illegal street trading and a number of FPNs.
Thank you. I agree with the first point. We can broaden the scoping on the fun fairs to any sort of corporate event on council land. I think that would be probably better. And also just to remind you all really that if we don't look at these as reviews, there's always the option of an information item, and you've seen this evening with the allotments, you can still have a very good opportunity to scrutinise officers and question them, and even give suggestions where you can. The difference between a review and an information obviously is that the review would give a formal recommendation from this committee to Cabinet, which they would have to look at, but an information item is a bit less formal, but it still gives you those options at your disposal to scrutinise if you wish to do so. So if you don't get your chosen suggestion pushed through this evening or at the next meeting, by all means we'll happily add it to the work programme as an information item, and we can get that looked at as well. Councillor Gohill?
Thanks, Chair. Can I firstly say that I absolutely agree with Councillor Smallwood that I think it should go till March next year. I don't know if it'll be worth doing a major review. I don't know what happens as well if things sort of change. So is it possible that review then gets scrapped after May 26th, if that were to happen? Because that would be a shame. We wouldn't want to waste a year of the work that we're doing on this committee. So I think closing off around March time is probably really sensible in my view. If we're going to add, and again, I'm happy to have this as an information piece if the committee doesn't feel minded to put it as a minor review. But I thought if we could put flooding and watercourses on there, I say minor because it typically only covers maybe a quarter of the year where we have some real flooding risk. So that would be my suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Gohill. With the March deadline, I think you're right anyway, because PERDA starts in March, so most of the council activities wind down at that point anyway. In terms of a scrapping or a review, that would ultimately fall on the Cabinet, whoever runs the Cabinet of the day. It would still be done by that point, and it would go to Cabinet, I assume in May, for whichever administration to review it, but that would be ultimately down to whoever's running the council. But the report would still be submitted. That's my understanding anyway. Anyone else? Anyone from the Labour side wish to contribute? Councillor Farley?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I echo the whole thing with the time frame, because looking at the work programme, there's no meeting in December. We don't have any meetings in August, so we're looking at 5 months, and to include the decision on what we're doing, so they might give us 1, maybe 2 witness sessions at most. So we haven't got we haven't got a lot of time. So when the first witness session possibly could be November. So you've got a very tight time frame for a review. But I'm not saying we don't do one, but it's very tight. And the things that I would want to look at, which I'm not sure we could fit into that time frame. When you mentioned about the fly posting particularly, that is something that is an issue, because I'm not sure that the council is, certainly things I've reported don't get removed. And I understand from when we've had officers come to us, we're told that, you know, as they go around, they identify them, they're meant to cut them off, but I see them around and they're there for, well, perpetuity, and so even reporting them, they don't get taken down. So that is, maybe that's something that could be tacked into that, I don't know. But parking, I mean, my gripe with parking is what we heard last time, is the fact that we don't run 24 hours. You have double yellow lines which are not enforceable, as they're supposed. You know, they are. It is an offence if you're parking there at midnight, but there's no one to enforce that, which I do think is, you know, what's the point of the double yellow lines if they can't be enforced? So there's things about that and social behaviour that I would like to look into, but maybe I'll give some more detail about that outside of the meeting. But I just don't think that some of these things necessarily could be fitted into a 5-month time frame. That's the difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Farley. As I said, these can be looked at information items as well, so by all means feel free to suggest any ideas you have and we can just look at them and put together a list. Councillor Core?
Thank you. I was quite interested in looking at private sector housing vis-a-vis how it sits with local authority structures, how well the two complement each other, where are the challenges, and what can we do to better it in terms of the resident outcome. Because some places for example, in my ward are places which are said to be privately managed, but they pay council tax. So there's always a tension between how it's managed and how the rest of this, for example, the garbage dump. So if the people who are not maintaining properly, when can the local authorities intervene? So that kind of thing I'm quite interested in exploring to see where it sits and what can we do to better it for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smallwood?
Thank you, Chair. If we had more time, I would be pushing for Councillor Gohill's suggestion of flooding, but my concern is it is a huge issue. It's an issue I receive an awful lot of emails about, or have done in my tenure, and I think it would need an awful lot longer. I'm minded to agree with Councillor Davies on his suggestion with the expansion of the funfair one. I think that's quite important, but it's quite a tight, nice little one that we could probably get into the time scale. The other one that I just wanted to raise is a review of the PSPO across the borough and how we enforce it, how it works, is it fit for purpose, how do we go about making sure that it happens. I can see people nodding, so I don't know whether that could be an agenda item or it could be a very short review, but if the committee was minded on the funfair one, I wouldn't be opposed, but maybe the PSPO one could be looked at as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
I've got two, and I don't think we're going to be able to fit them both in, but it's worth a go. So I'll ask: is it worth looking at something with HMOs? As we've known, there's quite a vast problem across the borough with HMOs. And the other one, which I'd be really, really keen to deal with, is private waste, so private business waste, how that's managed, because I know there's a number of businesses that don't have waste collection and potentially could cause the fly tipping issue that we're having across the borough. So I don't know if that's something, if Liz could work her magic with that, maybe we could have a private waste disposal review. Or
I wanted Liz to do it.
We could have a rubbish review. Something like that. Yeah, that'd be really helpful.
Anyone else? Okay. Liz, did you want to quickly go over what we've suggested, or?
Thank you, Chair. So it seems as though the ideas that what we've got, the fun fairs and the corporate events on council land and fly posting interlinked into that, illegal street trading and number of FPNs, flooding and water courses, which we've agreed may be a bit of a big topic. And then we had the suggestion regarding the WO lines and parking enforcement, ASB issues, but that's probably again a very big area. Private sector housing, and the PSPOs across the borough, HMOs, and the rubbish one as suggested by Councillor Davies, the private business waste. I think that's covered everything.
Everyone happy? Councillor Gohill?
More a suggestion than anything else, and please feel free to say no. There's quite a lot of items on that list, and I get all of them might not be feasible, but for the one, if we assume that they all are feasible, do you think it might be worth doing an exercise while we've got everyone in the room? Because given our next committee meeting isn't until September, maybe just doing a bit of a show of hands about which ones might garner a bit of support.
I think at this stage it's probably too early, because I don't want to disappoint you if you raise your hands and want one thing and then I'd come back the next meeting and say actually the officer said that they can't accommodate this or that. So I don't want to raise expectations just yet. What I will do is, as I said, we've got the list of suggestions. We'll go away and see what's feasible and what's not feasible, and as I said, I'll consult with the Labour lead and then we'll come back to you with what we've come back with. Okay? Yep.
Just to follow up on that, presumably that's something that happens before the next meeting. I'm just wondering if there's a way we can, and Liz, you might be able to answer this, if there's a way for the next meeting in September to be the first one towards this kind of review, if that's something that could be worked into, maybe via like emails or whatnot. I don't know, but I'm conscious there are only X amount of meetings, right? And I'd want to, even though it's a minor review, I want to give it as much time as possible, because we do, in this committee, ask a lot of questions.
Nice. It's a good idea. I think Liz will probably have to check that out. I don't know if there's any sort of limitations on us by constitution as what we have to do in public in deciding reviews, but if you could do most of it outside on email, then ultimately I would say yes, but it depends what Democratic Services say.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Gohill. So yes, that would be a possibility. We could take these ideas away, speak to officers, see what's feasible, and then perhaps discuss it by email, and then I could try and work towards getting the scoping report for September, which would then put us ahead of the game a bit. So we can look into doing that.
It'd be ideal, personally, I think, if we could do that. But, okay, if we're all happy with that then, we'll move on to the next item, which is the forward plan, pages 60. I was waiting for Janet to speak. Oh, she's missed already. Work programme, pages 77 to 80. Thank you. And item 10 is the financial scrutiny training, a verbal update, which I assume is from Liz.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you should have had an email today, hopefully. Yeah, so the financial scrutiny training is going ahead now. I believe it's on the 10th of September, and all members here are in. Oh, well then, that's a lovely way to celebrate your birthday, I think it's at 6 o'clock on that evening. So please come along, because obviously part of the role is to scrutinise the council's finances. So it would be a useful opportunity to learn more about that. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just a reminder that Liz also emailed members, I believe, early this week about secure documents. Accessing in an app?
Oh, yes. No? Yes, sorry, yes, I did. There is a restricted app. If any of you have time and if you want to try and get that downloaded, we can have a look at doing that now after the meeting, or you can arrange a more convenient time to pop into Democratic Services so we can sort it out for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you everyone for your attendance. That concludes the business this evening. The meeting is now closed at 8:35. Thank you and good night.